When I was a young man, I loved to go backpacking, and I decided that I was going to make a career of having fun. So I took up painting the landscape as a way to go backpacking all the time, and I really loved the Sierras. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was up there. And I would come up from LA and go backpacking, and I would see this place off in the distance as we drive by, and discover it's a place where people actually work. So I sort of convinced my wife to take the job here over jobs in the cities. So she got a job on a base, and I thought I was up in heaven. I just go out, go backpacking, and paint, and lo and behold, people were buying my paintings in Ridgecrest. I couldn't believe this. This was just working out like a dream. It was better than I could ever believe. Well, what happened was I had kids, and later on, my wife got tired of working here and wanted to live in a city. So we moved away, and so I started to pick up other things with art. I just discovered that I'm actually pretty good at art, and I decided to do people, and the reason was my son was questioning my artistic abilities because I couldn't draw people. So I picked up a sketchbook and started sketching away and did lots and lots of sketches of people. And I started to have fun. I would walk around a city in the east or in Ann Arbor, and I would draw people, and I mostly ignored the landscape in the east, but I would come back every year and go backpacking in the Sierras. And I would, when I go back to the city, I would sketch people. I especially like to sketch musicians because they play their music, and I get into this rhythm of drawing, and I'm able to draw them very quickly and loosely. And so after many years, I decided that I should really do my landscape the way I do people, quickly and efficiently, and catch the essence of something more than what I was doing with the watercolor, which is a little tedious because you have to sketch it out, then you paint it. But with drawing, you just draw it, and that's it, it's done. So I decided I was going to change what I was going to do. So I decided to call up my friend, Dr. Pat Brownberry, and ask if I can come along. Dr. Pat Brownberry does bat surveys, and she goes to various places and checks out the mines and checks out the kinds of bat that lives in these areas, and I help count the bats. So just before I do the count is the prettiest time of the day in the desert. I get to do my painting or sketch. I do my sketch, and then I count the bats. And so I do two things. I'm an artist that moonlights as a bat counter. I would make color sketches of scenes, but I had to pick a medium that could do this very quickly because these scenes in the desert disappear in just a few minutes. They show up and they go away. And even in the middle of the day sometimes, really pretty things show up and they disappear. And so obviously the thing to do was try pastels. And it worked really well because at first I added some color to my pencil and charcoal drawings, and I added more colors, and so it very quickly transitioned into Hamil style pastels, which is a cross between drawing and pastel painting. It's not very layered, it's very thin, and I use the gray paper as part of the visual effect. And if you look at my newer pastels, there's a lot of drawing elements in it, so it could be done very quickly like a drawing, and it's exceedingly fun to do. When I was doing watercolors of the Sierras, about half the paintings were sketches that I did plein air, out in the mountains. And just like here at this show, over half the paintings were done on location. Well, I call this show Transitions is because I showed how I transitioned on to pastels. And it didn't jump from watercolor to pastels. It went through various phases. It went through pure drawing, it went through ink drawing, then it went through watercolor and pencil, and watercolor and color pencils, which my last show had a lot of watercolors, but actually had a lot of pencil drawings in it. And this show, it's transitioned on to pastels. And this show, the pastels I use are Unison. They're really thick. They're big, thick pastels, so I don't dwell on the details. And I'm trying to capture the scene very quickly, so I limit myself to fat pastels and a charcoal, a stick of charcoal, hot compressed charcoal, and I mix the two, and I'm able to do these smaller sketches in about half an hour. It's mostly done in about half an hour. I would go home and sometimes add a sky or touch up very little edges, but I would look at it for a lot and just dab it a little bit and tune it up, and it's there. But the big ones are done, behind me, are done from, most of the big ones are done from sketches that are 18-inch by 12-inch. I use a gray paper so that I have less work to do. I have to get these pieces done very quickly for aesthetic reasons, and also for the amount of time I have. Pat tells me when to come back. I have to go search for something, then I have to paint it, and I have to go back. And, I'm doing two jobs at once when I'm out here. The gray is a medium tone that they'll go with any color. So you could put color down, you could put green down, yellow down, red down. It'll go along with that color. It harmonizes with the other color so that you don't have to worry about. You could use it as a medium tone, like on my skin. The darker shaded areas would be gray. It'll be fine. It doesn't have to have this color. It could be just any color, gray. And, I use a lot of tricks. I was successful when I was living here because I was doing scenes and visiting places that people were familiar with, and they know what it looks like, and they themselves would look at that scene and say, "Oh, that's pretty," and I know they've seen that scene, so I would paint something that they've seen, or something like what they've seen, or something they would think about where they camped, and I would paint that, and people would buy it, and I just kept doing it because it was such a success. And when I moved to Michigan, I changed my style and made it more zoomed in or more strangely composed, so it looks odd at first, and it became actually a little less successful, but to me it was more interesting. And what that period did was it made me able to do things other than that scene that's popular. So I would do things that were more artistic. And like these paintings in this show is much softer. It's more, a little bit more dreamlike than my old paintings. If you look at it, you say, oh, you think back, you would think about something more like this than what I did before. What I did before was something they would see and go, that's where I want to be, and I see this. Oh, what a great scene. And now I'm painting in such a way that I remember something like that. I've seen something like that, and it'll make you think a little bit about what you see. Lots of people have told me that my pictures look better than photographs. They make you think of that place. That's what I'm trying to do. You think about being on the water, like over there's a painting with the water in the Colorado River, and you would think about, you know, a middle of the river, but that's a odd scene because people don't usually look at something in the middle of the river because most people don't have a boat. But you know, to me, I think that would be more interesting because you get to think, well, gee, you know, it makes you stop and think a little bit. And things aren't as well defined nowadays when I paint things. They're more ethereal. And sometimes some of the paintings, they look like colored sketches in some ways. They have a little bit of color in it, but it's not a full painting, and it's no longer just a drawing, and it's somewhere in between. It's floating around, and everything's in transition, just like I named it. I used to be pretty sure of myself when I used to live here about what I was doing, but I was unsure if I was a real artist. I knew I was very successful, but other artists always, you know, say, "Well, is he really an artist?" or a businessman because I was so successful. So, but nowadays I feel like a complete artist. I can do people, I can do musicians, I could do cityscapes, I could do objects, and there's hardly anything I wouldn't do if it looks good, and I feel very comfortable doing anything. And I chose desert because I wanted to do the desert. It always was very pretty when I lived here. And always, when I moved to Michigan, with all the trees and all this heavy growth, I think about the desert. It's so open, it's so beautiful, it's so colorful. It's not just green or various shades of green. It's all the colors you can imagine everywhere, and and I'm able to look at it and say, I can do this, and I would do it nowadays, and I would do it in a very easy manner. And what people tell me is, I make things look easy. When I do something, it looks like it was easy to do, and that's the quality I like to show. And nowadays, more than the old style, people would look and they say, "Oh, God, it has everything in it." Now, if you go up to my painting, there's nothing there except what you imagine. So I'm trying to make you imagine all the rocks, all the trees, and I even make you imagine things that aren't there, and I make you imagine the water, because the water don't actually look like the way I paint it, but it really makes you think about the water and feel it. That's what I do, and I make you feel like you're sitting under a tree. I make you feel like you're looking at a bush, but if you go up to the bush, oh, it's really done in a simplistic way with just a few dabs of color. And I really feel good about doing that, and it's fun.